This is, like I said, an exciting month for me. I have really come to cherish January because it's an opportunity to just to look again at where we've come from and what we're going to, and to dream big from what God has for us. I honestly say, I promise I'm not crazy, but when I walk into this place, sometimes I don't see the church as it exists. I see the church as it's going to exist, or as I believe God is leading us for it to exist. And sometimes, for those of you that work closely with me and get frustrated with me when I'm impatient, it's because I want you guys to capture that vision so clearly. I want you to see it. I was talking to my chaplain assistant about some things yesterday, and his dad is also a pastor. And he said that his dad says all the time, "I wish I could just take from my head and pour into your heads." And that's kind of what I'm trying to do over this month. I have this vision in my heart, this dream in my heart that I believe is from God. And that's why we keep tying it to Scripture, so that you see this isn't just something that I came up with. Like, this comes out of God's dream for the church. And we want to look like God's dream for the church here in Highland City. And so this month is about trying to take that and pour that into not so much your head, honestly, but your heart. That it will live there, that it will grow there, that it will take root there, and that it will come out in the way that we do life. And so over the last few years, as I have learned how to do that, I've been refining the process. And so when we first began, it literally was just one Sunday. It was just Vision Sunday. And I tried to tackle everything in that one Sunday. And then being younger and less experienced, like I would tackle it all in that Sunday over like a 4-hour period, right? And then we would all go about our lives, and we wouldn't really talk about it again the rest of the year. And I'd be frustrated, like, why aren't they getting it? And so I've learned, or been learning, how to take those concepts and those ideas and weave it all through the year for us. But then also I've been learning that we need to spend more than just a Sunday on it in January. So now it's virtually a month-long deal. This year actually spilling into February, because for the first time we're also including in it a Student Ministries Day. And so please don't check out on February the 3rd. I want you to come, and I want you to hear from our student ministries, kids and youth, and everything that God is doing with them and what they are planning, because I want you as parents, future parents, or people that are reaching out to people that have kids, I want you to understand they're not just babysitting over there. Like, they are working on a strategic plan to help the gospel take root in the lives of these kids and spill over into their homes and their families. So that's on February the 3rd. You back up from that, I already told you the 27th is going to be focused on us as a church and how we move forward. And then next week is celebrating 2018. So that kind of leaves us with today, talking about what it means to live this life that Christ talks about. So we're going to go to John 10 and look at verses 1 through 10 and go with the approach of what does it mean? How do we live this life? How do we do it in our context, in the world that we live in this community, in this culture? And we're going to do that by contrasting it to what the enemy offers for us. And Jesus says in John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. But I have come, Jesus says, that you can have life and that you can have that life abundant. So what's the difference between the two? Because the scary thing is that for a lot of us as believers, we've taken lies from the enemy that he has implanted in our culture, in our lives, and sometimes in our churches, in our families. And we've accepted that lie as truth to our destruction, not realizing that we are playing right into his plan for us. And so as practically as I can, as clearly as I can, I want to take us through the difference between the two so that we can isolate it. Because I promise you, you can set aside everything that this world offers, every bit of it, and live the life that Christ has for you. And even though it is harder, and even though it is difficult, and even though it is painful, sometimes much more so than what the world offers, it is more fulfilling. It is more purposeful. It will leave you utterly drained at the end of your day, and happy that you poured everything that you had into someone else. And stealing from Andy Stanley, I will tell you that I say that not because I want something from you, but because I want something for you. We're not going through all of this because my hope is that the end result is more money in the offering plate. We're not going through all of this just because we need more people to work in the nursery or in children's church. We need those things, but that is not the only reason. I'm not going through all of this because I'm hoping to motivate you to go out and to find friends and neighbors and lead them to Christ and bring them here so I can say, hey, look, we've got more heinies in the chairs in the sanctuary. It's not all about that. It's not because I want something from you. It's because I want something for you. I want you to experience all the life that Christ has for you and not fall for the trap the enemy has for you. Because as I've shared with you so many times before, I have lived both. I have sunk in full force into all the enemy had for me, and I've run for everything that this life had to offer. I've run after fame. I have run after money. I have run after women. Like all the stuff that you can get that feels good for this body. I have run for it all and come up empty. I have also sacrificed and suffered and come up full. Because his promise is true. His words are true. So we're going to go this morning to a story that Jesus tells. This is going to hurt for a second, but I want you to settle in and just kind of go with me. This is a story that Jesus tells to a group of people that are a lot like us. And usually when we say something like that, we picture Jesus like sitting on the hill with the 5,000 he's getting ready to feed, right? And we have that beautiful picture of like the mountaintop and the fish and the loaves and all the people that are just like us. But this morning when I say he's talking to a people just are a lot like us, I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about a group of people that we dislike. I'm talking about a group of people that we say a lot of bad stuff about. I'm talking about a group of people that look so similar to our modern church that the realization of that is going to be hurtful to us. I'm talking about the Pharisees. Jesus in this story is talking to the Pharisees, and he's confronting them in the lie that they are living. That is a lie that is very close to what we live sometimes and accept as a counterfeit version of God's love. And in doing that, we actually, like them, push people out of the kingdom rather than invite them in. So would you go with me, please? John 10, picking up with verse 1, and then we're going to backtrack for a minute and get the context of chapter 9. So John 10, verse 1, he says, I tell you the truth. The man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who enters the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. And when he's brought them out all on his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice, but they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize the stranger's voice. But Jesus used this figure of speech, and they did not understand, meaning the Pharisees, what he was telling them. So Jesus said again, I tell you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate, and whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in, and he will go out, and he will find pasture. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. One way to understand what the real deal is to look at the opposite, to look at the fake, or to look at the counterfeit. When you examine that for all it is, you see what the real thing is not. And sometimes that helps us to understand. And that's the core of what Jesus is doing through this. He's given a comparison between the counterfeit and the real deal, between the Pharisees and himself. And in that, we can see the difference between the life that Jesus offers and the lie that the enemy offers. All of this comes out of an event that takes place in John chapter 9, just leading right up to here. Jesus and his disciples are coming along, and they encounter this man who the Bible says has been blind all of his life. And so the disciples ask a question that was actually very natural for their time period and their thinking, and is real similar to the way we think. They said, hey, Jesus, this guy has been blind all of his life. Did he sin, or was it his parents? Like what really bad thing happened that he would wind up this way? And Jesus says it's not that. Like this happened for the glory of God to be revealed. And then they encounter the guy, and Jesus, this is the time where he bends down and he spits in the dirt and he makes the mud and he packs it in the guy's eyes and he says, go and wash, and when you wash, you will receive your sight. And he does. He goes and he washes, and then he does another thing that was natural for the time, and he goes to the Pharisees for them to verify the miracle that has taken place. He goes to them, and it should have been a moment of celebration. It should have been a really big deal. This guy has always been blind. He's not seen a tree. He's not seen a bird. If he had kids, he's never seen his kids. He's married. He's never looked into the eyes of his wife. And now he can. He can see trees and leaves and colors and all that stuff, birds and animals, textures and light and dark, all of that stuff for the first time he can see it. And what do the Pharisees say? What is wrong with this man that he would heal you on the Sabbath? They were so caught up in the lie of the enemy and trying to hold to the letter of the law that they didn't understand the heart of God. When you come right down to it, they would have rather this man live another day in darkness than for him to be healed on the day of rest. Now you may hear that and say, well, why in the world would you say we're like them? Because we are not like that. Like, I would heal someone on a Sunday. By the way, their Sabbath was Saturday. We kind of sometimes think of it as Sunday because that's when we worship, but the Sabbath for them was Saturday. So you might say, but I wouldn't be like that. Like, I would rejoice in the healing, and I bet you would, but here's where we struggle. Because like them, we try sometimes to hold so rigidly to what we understand to be God's word and his law and his desire for us that we would rather people stay out of the kingdom than we'd rather them go to their destiny and die without Christ than come here and make us uncomfortable. We would rather the drug addict and the prostitute and the child molester and the person whose ethnicity we don't like and makes us uncomfortable, the person with the hairstyle that we don't like, or the piercings or the tattoos or whatever it may be. I know we've come a long way as a church, and most of those things don't frighten us anymore, but I promise if I could get you in a room alone and we begin to talk, we could reveal some things for you and some things for me that make us uncomfortable in other people. The truth be known, that there are some people that can walk in this door, and if someone came through right now that back door and you glanced over your shoulder, there is a kind of person, there's a personality, there's a lifestyle that as they came in, our gut reaction would be, I hope they don't sit by me. There's a kind of person that you and I could encounter that would make us so uncomfortable that we would rather step around them on the street. We would rather go the other way. Please don't make eye contact, at all costs. Like not be with them so that they don't make us uncomfortable, missing the fact that we could see physical, emotional, and spiritual healing in them if we would make ourselves uncomfortable enough to present them with the gospel. But we would rather them live in darkness for another day than give up our comfort for them to know Christ. That's where we're like the Pharisees. And let's just be honest enough, though, to say that we all struggle with it. Like, I'm not casting stones at you. I'm honestly revealing my heart because I have the same issues. I have to overcome them. I have to push past it. That's why, honestly, if we're going to be honest, that's why we can get 100 people to show up for a worship service on Sunday morning and 4 to 5, usually at best, to come to Saturate on Saturday night. Because we'd rather do what's comfortable and feels good than to do what is uncomfortable and puts us outside of the walls of this church. We would rather complain about the smell of the person that walked in than actually offer them what they need to get clean. We would complain about the cigarette butts in the grass in the parking lot rather than reach people that need to hear and know Christ. That's why I say we are Pharisees at heart. The good news is that we don't have to stay there. Like, if we recognize the lies that we have embraced and we let Jesus root them out of our lives, we can have the abundant life that he's called us to. We can embrace discomfort and walk into those places and thrive within them. We don't have to just barely eke by and survive as a church. We don't have to battle some of the stuff that we battle if we would just fully embrace what it is that God has for us. And so Jesus sets up front, like here's the counterfeit. This is what I don't look like. This is not the life I live. And so as the man comes to the Pharisees and they get upset about the healing, eventually they get so frustrated with him because he begins to defend Jesus and what he's done and say, only a man of God could do this. How could you say there's something wrong with him if he's healed me? Only God does that. And they said, we just don't want to hear you, and toss him out. Jesus encounters them at the beginning or the end of chapter 9, and the man commits to following Christ. And then picking up in verse 40, we're told that some Pharisees then come on the scene. And they ask, are you saying that we're blind too? And Jesus said, well, if you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim that you see, your guilt remains. And then let me tell you a story. Told them a story they would have understood very well. They're shepherds. They're out in the field, and they're keeping watch over the flock and taking care of them. And the shepherd that comes in the gate of the pen, the shepherd that comes and calls the sheep by name, that's the real shepherd. But the one that climbs over the wall, in verse 1, he says, is a thief and a robber, and that's you. You Pharisees, you're coming another way. You're standing against God and what he's doing, Jesus meaning by himself, and what God was using Christ to do with the people of Israel at the time. Like, you're standing against this. You are in opposition to what God did today in healing this man. So what you're doing is you're coming in another way. You're more concerned about the way you look. You're more concerned about the comforts of life. You're more concerned about these people giving you praise and lifting you up for all the stuff that you do than you are the soul of someone who's living in darkness. It says, and that's why the people of Israel are not listening to your voice, because they know the voice of the shepherd. Have you noticed that they hear my voice? Jesus is saying that they hear me and they come and they're following me, but they're resisting you because they know you're a thief and a robber. If we could, for a minute, embrace another hard truth. I encounter people all the time within our community, in my ministry, through the National Guard, and other aspects of my life. I encounter people all the time that struggle with connecting to God because of what a Christian has done to them. Because a Christian has condemned them. Because someone who says, I am a follower of Christ, I am someone who's supposed to be transformed by God's word, has spoken harshly to them, has condemned them because of their sin, has wronged them or cheated them in some way, because they see believers that live all week long looking nothing like Jesus, and then come into a place like this and we raise our hands and we shed the tears and we sing the songs and we cheer we do all of that stuff, and then we leave this place and we go out into the world and we don't care about the broken and the hurting that are all around us. We're more concerned with our safety and our comfort than the person that lives across the road that's dying and on a destiny towards heaven. Than the family that's falling apart because of alcohol, and we would rather just jump on the guy who's drinking than actually introduce him to hope and build a relationship based on genuine affection and love, whatever respect we could pour into that man or that woman to draw them to Christ. Rather than do that, we would rather just heap insults on them and condemn them for what they do and feel self-righteous in the fact that we don't have that issue and move on with our lives. That is the counterfeit that has infiltrated our churches. That is what we've embraced. We've embraced huge buildings that are beautiful, with poor and dying right next to us that can't even get a meal. So one way to understand the real deal, one way to understand the life that Christ has for us, is to understand what it is not, to see the counterfeit, to see the lie, and to recognize it for what it is. The other way that you could really dig deep into something and understand what it is to look at the authentic version. To see Christ for who he is, and then to try to live that life out. When I worked for the bank a number of years ago, right after Priscilla and I got married, I worked as a bank teller for a while. And when I began my teller training, they actually taught us how to produce counterfeit money. Craziest thing I had ever experienced. Like, wait a second. This is like the first day too. Like I was expecting to learn how to run the computer, to learn about banking and all that. We come in the first day, they teach us how to make counterfeit money. We learn how to forge checks. We learn like all of this stuff. And the teacher didn't give any explanation except, hey, let's learn this. This is what we're digging into. And we go deep into how to make the fake version. And then at the end of that, our teacher said, you've probably caught on by now, but I want to make sure you understand why I'm teaching you this. And she said, I want you to know very well what the fake looks like so that you know the difference between it and the real thing. So now let's shift our attention, she said, to official U.S. currency and all the stuff that goes into that. So we spent the next little bit of time focusing in on all the security features built into it and the paper it's made out of and the ink that's used and the process and all of that. But at the end of the day, what they were going for is recognize the fake, recognize the genuine, make sure the fake doesn't get in, and that everything that we do focuses only on the genuine thing. And I tell you, in our lives as believers, we need to recognize the counterfeit. One, so we can stand against it. We need to understand that in this spiritual warfare that we are fighting, that the enemy that wants to steal, kill, and destroy, part of the way he does that is he will send the counterfeit right into worship with us so they can disrupt us and tear things up and move on and leave us in disarray and ineffective for Christ. And so as leaders and as shepherds for Sunday school teachers and deacons and all of those, like if you're in one of those positions, you need to understand that we need to recognize the counterfeit so that on some level we can stand against it when we need to. But we also need to recognize the counterfeit in our lives. And see how beautiful the real thing is. And live that out. Going back to verse 1 again, Jesus, as he transitions, he tells us what it is that he looks like. He says, if they come in by any other means, verse 1, if they didn't enter the sheep gate by the gate, then climbs in some other way, that they're a thief and a robber. But the man who enters the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. And he tells us what that looks like. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice, and he calls them by name, and he leads them out. And when the sheep, when he's brought them out on their own, he goes ahead of them, and he leads them, and they follow them because they know his voice. Pointing to himself as the true shepherd, as the genuine article, as the real deal, saying that I have come now and the sheep are going to recognize my voice and I'm going to lead them out. I'm going to take them out to pasture where they get everything that they need. I'm going to protect them and I'm going to care for them and I'm going to watch over them because ultimately, he says later, I'm actually going to lay my life down for them because that's what the shepherd does. That's how he protects the sheep. And they're going to know my voice and recognize me and follow me. One of the things that means for us as believers is that we've got to be honest enough with ourselves that we can stop living the counterfeit life and actually start following him out into the pasture. That we would follow him out into the pasture, meaning that we would spend time with him, that we would allow him to groom us and grow us and reveal in us the dark areas in our heart that we need to deal with, but also that we would allow him to pour into our lives in a way that we would reflect his love in this world so that people would be drawn to him, not repelled by us. Verse 2, he says, part of that is recognizing that he's the shepherd. I love that picture. We sometimes think of Jesus as like this kind of Santa Claus or just this old man kind of figure with a white beard and a big throne and stuff like that. And we like the picture of him loving us and embracing us and dying for us. But we forget that the shepherd didn't just protect the sheep. The shepherd disciplined the sheep. Like that rod he carried, it was for the bear and the others that would attack, but it was also for the sheep. He corrects us, he rebukes us, and he protects us, and he watches over, and then he leads us. And part of the reason why the shepherd needed why the sheep needed the shepherd to lead them was because sheep are dumb. I mean, we need to understand, like, when God is calling us sheep, he's not calling us sheep because, like, there were these beautiful, magnificent, intelligent animals. Like, if the shepherd wasn't watching, sheep would walk off of cliffs. If the sheep's wool gets too big and they get turned over, they can't get up on their own. That's how we are. If the sheep are left to their own devices, they will wander away. They will wander towards danger. They will wander away from food. They will wander away from protection. That's why the shepherd had to watch them, and he had to pull them back, and he had to create something to keep them in at night so they wouldn't wander away. And the shepherd did all of that stuff, and we need the shepherd in our life. We need his guidance, his direction, his rebuke, his protection, his prodding, his leadership, and his guidance. I'm the shepherd. But he also said, I'm the door. For a while it puzzled me why he suddenly jumped to like this whole other illustration. And I'm going to come clean. I am not a Greek scholar. I am not a New Testament scholar. I was not there, obviously. Some of you were a lot closer to the time of Jesus than me. I'm just going to say that. Yeah, well, you call me short enough. I'm just, I'm giving it back to you, Virginia, because I love you. But I read a beautiful excerpt in a commentary by Warren Wiersbe this last week. And if you ever get a chance to read Warren Wiersbe's work, I highly recommend it to you because he is a New Testament scholar. And he is all those things that I am not. But here's this beautiful picture that he tells about this. He said, as they were getting the sheep ready to protect them overnight, that sometimes what the shepherds would do was they would take rocks and things, and they would build this pen out of the rocks and wherever they had, and they would stop short, creating an entranceway where you could come in and out. And then at night, one of the shepherds would lay in that place to protect the sheep. And if he's right, then what Jesus is saying, he's not jumping to another illustration in another picture. He's taking us a step further. He's saying, I am the shepherd that leads and guides and protects. I'm the shepherd that's going to watch over you at night by placing myself between you and harm, which is exactly what Christ did on the cross. But he's taken that illustration then to another step where he says, I'm also the only way in. In another place, Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. At the end of John chapter 10, Jesus says, all of this stuff that we're talking about is possible, the leading, the guiding, the protecting, the life abundant that I'm offering. He says it's all possible because God has given me the authority to lay my life down and to take it up again. That wonderful love that we've been singing about all morning, that was God pouring himself in his Son out for us. Jesus said, I am making the way for you to find the protection, the belonging, all of that stuff in the life that I am offering. I'm making the way for that because I'm going to lay my life down. I'm going to take your place. I'm going to literally put myself between you and danger and take the full brunt of that so that you can be a child of God. So that you can enjoy the protection of the sheep pen. And you can enjoy me leading you out to the pasture where you get fed and nourished and strengthened. Jesus is the source. So in the moments that we have left, let's talk a little bit more in depth about this authentic life that he offers us. Picking up verse 7, and then we're going to go to Galatians 5. Verse 7, Jesus says, because the Pharisees weren't getting the illustration that he's telling them in the first story. So then he tells them a little bit more. He says, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. Whoever comes in, you'll be saved. You'll be protected. You'll be a part of this family. And not only now, but forever. He will come in and he will go out and he will find pasture. Thief comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. But I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. You would jump over with me to Galatians 5. Here's what hurts my heart the most. Sometimes I teach you guys a little bit about the difficulty it is to be a pastor. We talk about different aspects of that. And a lot of that's just in jest. I just like to poke fun at you. I'm glad that you guys poke fun at me, even though you remind me all the time I'm short. The way I'm going soon, you can start talking to me about other things. But I like that part about our relationship. But if I was to be very, very serious with you for a minute, one of the things that really does hurt to my soul, one of the things it does weigh on my heart is seeing people accept this lie from the enemy and embrace it in their life to their destruction, not realizing that that's what they're doing. And I encounter families like that in the Guard, and I encounter families like that in our community, and honestly, I encounter families like that in our church. And that is why I preach the things that I preach. And it's why we have the conversations that we do. That, honestly, is why you guys have to endure 45-minute to hour sermons from me. Some of it is that I'm long-winded. Some of it is that I get going and I can't stop. But a lot of it is that I am so passionate that I want to take that time that I have to pour into you so that just one person can get it and change their family. Because that's what changed my family. I lived a life for a while that said, you know what, I don't have an anger problem. I just get frustrated, and it's not really that big of a deal. And I thought that until I saw my then 2-year-old daughter imitate what I was doing. We're building this Lego tower one day, and she builds it up, and it comes apart, of course, because you can only build them so high, even if I'm trying to hold it together for her, and it cracks in half, and I literally see like this beautiful, curly-headed, bouncy little kid turn into a little monster for a moment, pick up those Legos, sling them into the wall, and storm out of the room. And I realized she was doing what she had seen me do. And that's why I am passionate about pleading with you for your families, because some of you guys are living in chaos within the walls of your home because you have accepted some lies from the enemy who wants to steal from you, who wants to kill you, and wants to destroy you. And you've just accepted it as either culture or habit or upbringing or whatever. And you have that in your house. And so they're slamming doors and relationships are a wreck, and you can't sit across the table at a meal with each other in peace. Alcohol has slipped in and has wrecked things, and bad attitudes and habits have slipped in because workaholism has taken one or the other. Because your eye has wandered, and even if your body didn't follow, your eye and your heart has been given to another. And so now you're not fully committed to your spouse because you didn't feel like it was a priority to pour God's word into your kids because you wanted them to choose their path. And now you're seeing the end results of that as they're 12, 13, 14, 15, 20 years old, and you just don't understand what's going into it, that you're feeding the lie of the enemy that has come into your life and going, I don't know what to do. How did we get here? And I don't want to condemn you or shame you. I want to help you open your eyes to what's going on and see that it's worth the hard work. That it is worth getting up on a Sunday morning, even when you're tired, even when you're not feeling well, and come together for corporate worship. That it is worth getting into a small group with people who are in a similar life place as you, even though there will be drama in that group, even though the teacher may not be as skilled as you would like them to be, even though you don't like the curriculum they're going through, to recognize you need the accountability and the friendship and the sharing of life with those people. That it really is worth setting aside time Monday through Saturday to get into God's Word together. That it is worth having that uncomfortable conversation with your spouse or with your kids. That punishment for the little ones shouldn't be you're not going to church, but actually should be you're going to go to church a little bit more. Because I want you to come to grips with the awe-inspiring, life-changing, heart-rescuing power of God. In Galatians, Paul addresses some lifestyles that he wants the people of God to walk away from. And one of the lies that we have stumbled into is that we've accepted this list that I'm going to read for you as just a list of do's and don'ts. Like, don't do this, everything will be okay. But that's not the reality. Like he's not just addressing actions here. He's actually addressing attitudes and lifestyles and saying, Christ has rescued you. He's given you a new heart. Like one of the verses we're looking at in a couple of weeks, 2 Corinthians 5:17, like the old has passed away, the new has come. And so you should be weeding some things out of your life. You should be cultivating some other things in your life and allowing God to work through that to transform you. We can't dive deep into all these, but I want to hit on one for you as we go through. So this is Galatians 5, picking up with verse 16. Paul begins to summarize by saying, so I say to you, live by the Spirit, And you will not gratify the desires of the sinful nature, for the sinful nature desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the sinful nature. So same thing we've been doing, this compare and contrast thing. Like the Spirit wants one thing, the enemy wants another thing for you. The sinful nature that's in all of our hearts wants to mess us up. And so we need to recognize that. He goes on to say they are in conflict with each other so that you do not do what you want. Yeah. So we can all identify, right? There are things that we want to do. There are areas we want to grow in our life, but sometimes we feed into the sinful nature of our life so much that we can't, that we're not moving forward. We're just stuck. And we'll blame it on the church, and we'll blame it on the pastor, we'll blame it on our Sunday school class, we'll blame it on whatever, and not take responsibility for the fact that we've cultivated some sin in our lives that needs to be pulled out. And so he tells us what that looks like. Verse 19, the acts of the sinful nature are obvious. Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage from my past, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Checklist of things. Well, I don't do that. Okay, I'll stop doing that. I'll get angry a little less. I'll try to taper down on my drinking. It's not about that. It's understand, these are heart attitudes, and these heart attitudes drive actions in our lives, and these things are contrary to the life of God. If you want a life of chaos, if you want a lot of conflict in your life, if you want to struggle at home and at work, in every area of your life, then embrace these things, as many have. But if you want the life that God has for you, cultivate and embrace some other things. Picking up verse 22, the fruit of the Spirit is love, is joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against these things, he said, there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature and its passions and desires. Since you live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other. In other words, there are two paths before you. There are two different ways of life that you can embrace. And so rather than embrace the one that leads to your destruction, embrace the one that leads to the abundant life that Christ promised. As I said already, I've walked in both, and I can tell you, when you fully submit, when you finally stop playing the game, when you finally let go and give everything to Him, you will not look back or regret it. I've not for an instant. And that moment was way closer to the present day than I would like to admit. But it was transformational. Because in that moment I realized it wasn't about a one-time prayer or a one-time desire. It was about an everyday recommitment. To moment by moment, decision by decision, surrender myself to Him. This past week, as Priscilla and I were out and about, she came across an article that I asked her to send to me because of the illustration that it had, and I want to share it with you because it goes directly to one of the lies that we have accepted as a people, even within the church, and that is that money's going to make everything okay. You see, we run after the things that will lead to money, and so we work at the expense of our family, and we sacrifice and we lie, and we do all these things because we hope to accumulate money so that we can have things, or we can go on vacations, or whatever it may be. We envy the people that can stand on a stage and sing a song, or someone that can go out in the field and play a game, and we throw millions at these people, and especially here in America, we think that's the life that we want to have. If only I could have that, if only I could live that way, then everything would be okay. Here are some stats from the wealthiest man in the world, I think, is what I heard. I could be a little bit off. Anyway, incredibly crazy rich person. So you may know his name. I think it's pronounced Jeff Bezos. Gets a little money from Amazon. A little check here and there, a little bit. Just $78 billion, $500 million a year. A little bit of money. So we had some fun in the first service because they broke this down into what that would mean for us, like compared to our salaries. So for anyone that gets paid monthly that breaks down to $6,541,000,000. For anyone that gets paid weekly, if if you want a comparison, he gets $1,509,000,000. Anybody still get paid hourly? Like, I don't want to know how much you get paid hourly. Do you get paid hourly? Okay. Well, compare yours to his. He makes $8 billion an hour. Do you want to hear minute and second, or are we getting the point?
Point taken.
Point taken? It's a lot, right? But it's not enough to hold his marriage together. It's not enough to give true happiness. And I'm not making fun of him, and I'm definitely not finding joy in his situation. But I want to make the point really clear. Remember, Jesus said the enemy comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. There are a whole lot of people that ran after money, thinking money would give them happiness. And his life is, I can guarantee you, in a wreck right now because of what's happening. But we've also seen people who have a whole lot of money and have a whole lot of fame and all the stuff that goes with it that take their lives. They do stupid stuff like get addicted to drugs, that wreck relationships over alcohol. In your personal life, you could probably point to any number of people that have run after the whole, fulfill your body's desires through sex, that have climbed the corporate ladder at work, that have succeeded in some kind of performance area, baseball, football, soccer, whatever it may be. Like there are enough people in here that people personally that have excelled in stuff that life says is important, and they've lost their family, they've lost their dignity, they've sacrificed their character, and they've come up empty. Because they've accepted lies that the enemy has woven in, because the enemy comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. And the sad part of that is, we've embraced the lie of the enemy while shunning the gift of the Savior. And it should just be the other way around. Much more than a list of do's and don'ts, what Christ has asked for from us is just love. It's just that he defines love differently than we do. We define love as an emotion, as like a hug, a kiss, like those things, as a feeling of warmth, a feeling of desire, whatever. We think of love that way. Jesus, as he came to the end of John, the Apostle John quotes him as saying, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. It's not about feeling warm and fuzzy. It's not about a hug or a gift that we give him, except that it's a gift of our heart, a gift of submission, a gift of following. And that's what he wants. And I promise you, the cool thing about it is that within the boundaries that he sets, there's actually ultimate freedom instead of bondage. I was talking with a soldier yesterday, a couple of different soldiers. One of them I was talking to was trying to wrestle with that idea of free will versus God directing things. And basically, what it was just saying, buying into the idea. And this is a guy that says he's a Christian, but he's kind of buying into the idea that if he fully embraces God, he's enslaving himself. And he's like, how does that work? And I said, well, when my kids were young, I gave them freedom as they were learning to walk. But I set boundaries. Within the boundaries, there was complete freedom. They could walk where they wanted. They could do what they wanted. But there were some boundaries for their protection. Don't stick your tongue in the outlet. Don't climb the bookshelf and bring it down on you. Don't bang the pots and pans. But if you stay within the boundaries where you're going to be safe and well taken care of, then you can have fun and you can do the things that you want to do. God has just set some boundaries around us and said, if you embrace these, you will have a full life, because you'll limit conflict by not sleeping with everyone that you meet. You will limit conflict by not embracing alcohol and letting it wreck your life. You will avoid conflict by reining in your anger and living a life of joy and peace and being patient with others. And you just come within the boundaries, and there's complete joy and freedom. Go outside, and you suffer the bondage, the consequences, and the pain. This last week, as I was doing some study for this, I came across a sermon by John Piper as he addressed this. And it came to the end, and he said, if you think about these things that Jesus is saying, I am life, and I'm offering you life, and I'm offering it to the full. Go way beyond that. As far as the Pharisees were concerned, for any man to stand there as Jesus did at the end of this conversation and say, I have authority to lay my life down and to take it back up again. And that's how I am the shepherd. That's why I can lead. That's why I can guide. That's why I can protect. He said, if you really think about it, anyone who makes that claim is either crazy or God. And that was the decision that he left those Pharisees with. Like you can either look at Jesus and say he's crazy, or you can say he's God, but there's no in between. Which means for us that we can either worship him and accept him for who he is and follow him completely, or we, even as supposedly devoted followers, might as well say we just think he's crazy because we don't think his way works. The decision I would ask for you this morning is to fully embrace him as God. Say, like, I believe in you, I believe in your way. I will follow you, and I will shun and walk away from the world's point of view, the counterfeit that the world presents, and also the counterfeit that sometimes the church promotes. I'll shun and walk away from all of that and embrace you. And in that, learn to embrace people that make me uncomfortable. In that, learn to embrace situations that make me uncomfortable. One of the things I am most thankful for from my service in the military is because I have to wear that dual hat. I have to be clergy and military officer. I have to stand for all the things that we stand for biblically, but then I also have to understand that there's some restrictions and some things within the military that I have to obey. And so it has put me in some situations with some people that I might not have otherwise been in. And I think one of the greatest lessons I've taken away from that is that my love of God doesn't mean I have to condemn people. This whole idea of love the sinner, hate the sin, sometimes drives us to just hate the sin, hate the sin. That's the way it comes out. That's what they see. And I've had to learn how to navigate that and sit down with someone whose life is diametrically opposed to what I believe, and yet say, I love you, and I will serve you, and I will walk through this hard time with you. I'll embrace you and celebrate if you follow the Christ that I follow, but if you choose not to, I will still love you and embrace you and walk with you through this. As we fully learn what it means to come to celebrate and submit to God in Christ Jesus, we will learn how to do that part of loving God, loving people. I had a conversation with Eddie not too terribly long ago, and he took something to heart that I didn't expect him to, but it's awesome. And we're talking about different ways of doing ministry. I know part of his heart is prison ministry. Part of his heart is reaching people who are struggling with addictions and things like that. And so I sent him an article from a pastor who started reaching out to that segment of their community by joining an AA meeting. He didn't have an alcohol problem or anything like that. Like, he wanted to be there to be a resource and to point to hope and all of that. And so he started going there. And then other people from the church started doing the same. And then they started seeing people who are struggling with alcohol and struggling with drugs, and people even that were on like prison and house arrest that were coming to their church. And he said it was so amazing. I thought for sure I was going to get fired over this deal, but the church embraced it. And he said now it's not an uncommon thing to see people come into our doors to worship with us wearing anklets that give away their position because they're under house arrest. And I followed up with Eddie, as I normally do when I send someone an article, and said, what did you learn and what did you get out of that? He said, I can't wait to fill up a row of people in our church of people with anklets that are going through hard times that are coming to Christ. And I said, I love that. That will make us uncomfortable, but I love it, and I can't wait to see it happen. And that's where we need to be going as a people. That we don't want to just see people who look like us, act like us, smell like us come into this building, but that we want to see the broken and the oppressed and the hurting and the dirty and the sinful and all of that come into this place. More importantly, come to the Savior and experience the same change and restoration and healing that we have. Are you ready to embrace that, church? Are you ready to go into that and all that it will cost us? If not, I'm just going to be honest, we might as well just close the doors and stop being a church. I didn't sign up to lead a country club. And you didn't come here to be a member of one. I know that, because I know your heart. We We just got to be brave enough to face the places where we're still struggling, and then to move forward into this community and be braced for and ready for where that's going to take us and how hard it's going to be, but how gloriously awesome it's going to be to see how God changes lives. I'm going to pray for you, and our musicians are going to lead us in a song. And here's what I'm asking from you today. Would you just be brave enough to say to God, like, I will change, I will do whatever it is that you call me to do in order to fully follow you. And so I did this last week just because there were some specific things I asked of you that I wanted you to be able to follow up with on you. But I'm going to start doing this at least for the near future. As we're wrapping up the invitation time, as I'm praying for you, I'm just going to have my email address on the screen. And if God is tugging in your heart in an area and you would like to reach out to me so I can pray for you and encourage you, I would love the opportunity to do that. Because I really believe we've got to be serious in some areas of our life to get to the next place that God is taking us. So that could be your response today. Maybe your response today would be to go back to the prayer wall and to begin to pray through some of those things. There's some heart-wrenching and there's some very exciting things that are back there as people have poured out their hearts and asked for God to intervene. We shared with you last week how He's answered one of those prayers. That happens as we continually pour into Him and lean into Him and seek His face. And so maybe that's it. And maybe just one last option is that God is leading you to come up here and to pray, or maybe to slide over next to someone and pray with them. I had an awesome conversation with someone a week or so ago where they said, man, there was just this overwhelming sense of God's presence during the invitation and drawing me to do what you asked me to do, and that was to slide over and pray for someone. And it was scary. I didn't want to do it, but when I embraced it, here's the wonderful thing that came out of it. And if we're going to be a family, let's start being a family. Let's carry each other's burdens. Let's stand side by side. Let's make time to lift each other up in prayer. Whatever it is you decide to do in this moment, just do something that will express to God, this is what I've learned, this is where I'm going to change, this is how I'm going to be different, and take this into this community. Let's pray. God, I am so thankful for these people. I'm thankful for the opportunity just to walk with them through life. And I pray in this moment that you would help us to hear your voice, to feel your presence, and to have the courage to follow you. I am confident in this moment that you're dealing with sin in someone's heart. Help them to repent and walk away. Wouldn't be surprised at all if in a group this size, especially with the online presence, there's someone who's hearing this that doesn't know you. And maybe they heard something different that opened up something today. And I pray your Holy Spirit would continue to feed that and work in that, but that you would give them the faith and the courage to respond. There's some broken relationships in here that we cry out to you and ask you to mend. There's some fears in here that need to be overcome. There's some heart hurt, some anxiety, some fear, some depression. And I pray you would enable someone to just boldly and faithfully lay before you and be set free from today. And in that, God, I know that there are also probably literally hundreds of things that you are dealing with right now that I can't even fathom. But God, we just want to ask you to move. We want to ask you to change us and transform us, that in this moment we would be forever changed. That you would do something great and allow us just to see a glimpse of your glory. In your Son's name.